Hi everyone. Before we get into this audiobook, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button and drop a like. It helps me out a lot, as well as contributes a lot to the channel. Now, let's get into the story. I hope you enjoy. The air vibrated with anticipation. Lyra, amidst the waiting unmated females, felt the full moon's power resonate through her very being. Each year the ritual ground buzzed with hope, intertwined with apprehension, yet tonight the underlying tension felt like a taut wire. Around her, a palpable excitement simmered, a barely concealed eagerness among the women, each vying for the alpha's favor. However, Lyra battled a rising tide of dread. What was her purpose here? A non-entity, a shadow clinging to the edges of the pack. The full moon cast an otherworldly luminescence over the clearing, painting elongated, dancing silhouettes that seemed to amplify her insignificance. Pine needles whispered beneath her restless feet as she sought to disappear into the throng. The resinous scent of pine blended with the heavy, sweet aroma of heightened instincts and pheromones, a suffocating combination threatening to overwhelm her. She squeezed her eyes shut, striving for composure, reminding herself she was Lyra Meadowlight, more than just an afterthought. A hush descended as Kade, alpha of the Blackwood pack, emerged from the tree line. His movements possessed an innate command, his mere presence enough to quell the pack's fidgeting energy. His gaze, the color of a turbulent ocean, swept over the assembled women, his expression a mask. Lyra reflexively averted her eyes, suddenly vulnerable beneath his intense scrutiny. Vera Nightshade stood near the forefront, exuding self-assurance and a blatant air of entitlement. Her scarlet gown, a sharp contrast to the earthy hues worn by the others, seemed to demand attention. She flicked her raven hair over her shoulder, her gaze unwavering on Kade, a predatory smile curving her lips. Everyone anticipated his choice of her, her reinstatement as Luna after their estrangement. Lyra chanced to glance at Kade, her pulse quickening. His attention lingered on Lyra for a fraction too long, and Lyra felt a peculiar pang, a blend of disappointment and liberation. She banished the thought. It was absurd to imagine him choosing anyone else. The ceremony commenced with a deep, sonorous chant led by the pack elders, a rhythmic invocation that resonated within Lyra's very core. The atmosphere thickened with magic, a tangible force that prickled her skin. Kade began to circle the females, his movements measured and deliberate, his eyes like probes. He paused before Lyra, and the pack held its collective breath. Lyra's smile widened, almost blinding in its brazenness. Lyra steeled herself for the expected outcome, already envisioning Lyra's triumphant return. Then, Kade moved on. A collective gasp rippled through the gathering. Bewilderment spread as Kade continued his circuit, his gaze searing into each female with unnerving intensity. He halted before a young beta's daughter, paused momentarily, then resumed his journey. The tension reached a breaking point. A wave of lightheadedness washed over Lyra. She wobbled, struggling to maintain her footing. She was a nobody, an orphan taken in by a distant pack relative. She possessed no status, no influence, no claim to anything. Why was she even participating? Then, their gazes locked. Kade froze. Time seemed to dilate. The chanting receded into the background. The murmurs of the pack faded away, and only the intense connection between their eyes remained. His eyes, usually glacial, held a spark she couldn't decipher, something that sent a tremor through her. He advanced toward her. Another step. Lyra felt her breath seize in her chest. This couldn't be unfolding. Not for her. Kade reached out and gently clasped her hand. His touch sent a surge of power through her, a primal link that resonated deep within her spirit. Her heart hammered against her ribs, threatening to escape. A collective murmur swept through the pack, a bewildered and incredulous whisper that morphed into stunned silence. Lyra's face twisted with fury, her eyes burning with malice. Kade raised Alara's hand, his gaze encompassing the pack. His voice, rich and resonant, sliced through the silence like a blade. "I choose Ilara Meadowlight." The words reverberated through the clearing, shattering the carefully constructed assumptions of the pack. It was an act of defiance, a blatant rejection of everything they thought they knew. A declaration of war. Ilara stared at him in disbelief, her mind reeling. This had to be a fabrication. A twisted fantasy. Kade drew her closer, his grip firm and possessive. He turned to face Lyra, his expression implacable. "She is my chosen mate," he stated, his voice edged with steel, "and she will be accorded respect." He then turned back to Ilara, his eyes softening almost imperceptibly. "Are you willing, Ilara?" he asked, his voice barely audible, yet somehow carrying to everyone present. She searched his eyes, seeking any trace of deceit, any hint of hidden motives. But all she perceived was a strange fusion of vulnerability and resolve. She understood the implications. She understood the price she would bear. The pack would despise her. Lyra would turn her existence into a torment. Yet something in Kade's eyes drew her in. A challenge, a plea, a desperate need that resonated with something profound within herself. Taking a steadying breath, Ilara met his gaze, her voice tremulous yet firm. "I am willing." Kade nodded, a fleeting expression of relief flickering across his face. He turned back to the pack, his expression hardening once more. "Then let the marking commence," he commanded. The pack elders moved forward, intoning the ancient words of the mating ritual. The air crackled with raw power as Kade lowered his head to Ilara's neck. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the pain. His teeth grazed her skin, sending a cascade of shivers throughout her. Then he sank his fangs deep into her flesh. Agony ripped through her, a searing torment that elicited a gasp. She clung to Kade, her nails digging into his shoulders. The pain was almost unbearable, but she refused to yield. The chanting amplified, the magic intensified, and Ilara sensed a foreign sensation spreading through her. It felt as though a fire had ignited within her, incinerating the doubts and insecurities that had haunted her for so long. Finally, the pain receded, replaced by an unfamiliar sense of connection, a bond linking her to Kade in a way she couldn't yet grasp. She opened her eyes and gazed at him, her heart a frantic drum. The mark of the Alpha was now etched upon her neck, a permanent symbol of their union. A brand, a proclamation, a life sentence. The pack remained silent, paralyzed. Lyra stood rigid, her face a canvas of pure venom. Kade raised his head, his eyes blazing with ownership. He scrutinized the pack, daring anyone to challenge his decree. "She is mine now," he rumbled, his voice a low threat. "And anyone who harms her will answer to me." He turned to Ilara, his grip tightening on her hand. "Come," he murmured softly. "Let's go home." He guided her away from the clearing, leaving behind a pack steeped in stunned silence and a Luna consumed by unbridled rage. As they retreated into the shadows, Ilara couldn't suppress the tremor of apprehension. She had been chosen, claimed, branded, but at what cost? And what awaited her now as the Alpha's chosen mate? The familiar forest scent, usually a balm, pressed upon Lyra, heavy with unspoken censure. She trod the worn path, seeking the solace of the creek, but the sowing leaves seemed to hoard secrets she wasn't privy to. "Did you see her face?" A voice, Mara's barbed rasp, cut through the morning quiet from behind a knot of ancient oaks. Lyra stilled. Lyra Meadowlight, as if Kade would truly favor her. A second voice, softer yet equally laced with venom, chimed in. "Transparent, isn't it? A message to Lyra, a pathetic one, using an orphan as a pawn." A shard of disbelief pierced Lyra. A pawn? Reduced to that? She flattened herself against the rough bark, eavesdropping as the voices, unaware of her presence, continued their cruel analysis. "Lyra will reclaim her place. Too powerful, too entrenched. Kade will see his error. This infatuation with Lyra is a transient distraction." The words were frigid splinters, shattering the fragile hope that had dared to bloom within her. She had been foolish enough to entertain the notion that Kade's claim held genuine feeling, a flicker of authenticity. But this malicious chorus affirmed her deepest insecurities. She was an outsider, an anomaly, a mere instrument in a game far beyond her ken. Forcing movement, her steps felt weighted as she resumed her trek. The creek, her sanctuary, now echoed the mockery in her heart with its gentle babble. She perched on a mossy boulder, gazing into the pellucid water, her reflection wavering with suppressed tears. The bond with Kade, a subtle tremor beneath her skin, was a constant reminder of their entangled fates, however suspect their origins. Could she ever truly confide in him? Could she ever believe his affections were anything but a calculated gambit? Later, she discovered Kade on the training grounds, his robust physique silhouetted against the fiery sunset. Engaged in sparring, he moved with a liquid grace that belied the lethal force he wielded. After observing him for some time, she steeled herself for the confrontation she knew was unavoidable. Eventually, he paused, wiping perspiration from his brow, and she approached, her voice a near whisper. "Kade, we need to talk." He pivoted, his expression an inscrutable mask. "Lyra, what's wrong?" She hesitated, searching for the right phrasing, words that wouldn't expose her vulnerability. "I overheard some of the pack talking today." His jaw clenched. "About what?" "About us. About why you chose me." She swallowed, meeting his gaze directly. They think you only claimed me to spite Lyra." Kade's eyes darkened, and a nerve pulsed visibly in his jaw. His silence was a more damning indictment than any vehement denial could have been. "Is it true?" she insisted, her voice unsteady. "Am I just a weapon to you?" He turned away, pacing with barely contained agitation. "That's not the way it is, Lyra." "Then how is it, Kade?" she pressed, her volume escalating. "Tell me the truth." He halted his restless strides and turned to face her, his features etched with internal conflict. "It's complicated. Lyra and I, things weren't working. Expectations were high. The pack assumed we would be together, but it wasn't what I desired. The full moon, it was a snap decision." "A snap decision?" Lyra repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. "You marked me, Kade. You sealed our fates." "That's not a snap decision. That's irrevocable." He raked a hand through his hair, openly frustrated. "I know, Lyra. And I didn't foresee the bond acquiring such potency." "Such potency?" she scoffed. "You rue it, don't you?" "You rue binding me." "No." He countered swiftly, his gaze locking with hers, igniting a flutter in her chest. "I don't regret it. But the situation is more nuanced than you perceive. What's not simple, Kade? She challenged. Enlighten me. What am I to you? He closed the distance between them, his presence overwhelming her senses. You're singular, Lyra, different from them. You possess strength and empathy, and perspective that eludes them. His words were like a soothing balm to her injured ego, but she couldn't dispel the underlying suspicion that he was withholding crucial information. But is it sufficient, Kade? She inquired softly. Is that enough to foster a lasting connection? Or will I perpetually be a memento of your past with Lyra? He remained silent, his lack of response speaking volumes. Concurrently, Lyra was spinning her own manipulative scheme. She located Mara and her cohort near the pack house, their expressions sour with resentment. Such a pity, isn't it? Lyra remarked, her voice saturated with false commiseration. That Kade would sink to such tactics, exploiting poor Lyra in that manner. Mara's eyes narrowed to slits. It's unjust, Lyra. You are the rightful Luna. Lyra sighed, feigning resignation. The pack deserves a commanding Luna, someone immersed in our traditions. Lyra, she's an outsider, unversed in our ways, someone who remains apart. What course of action will you pursue, Lyra? Mara queried, eagerness lacing her tone. Lyra smiled, a frigid, calculating expression that failed to reach her eyes. I intend to remind Kade of what he has forfeited, and ensure Lyra understands precisely her position. She paused, allowing her pronouncements to resonate. Ultimately, honesty prevails, wouldn't you agree? Even if it inflicts discomfort. Lyra observed Mara and her companion exchange significant glances. The seeds of discord had been planted. It wouldn't be long before they blossomed into rebellion, the price of Crow. Spite, she mused, could be exorbitant. And Lyra, the unsuspecting innocent, was about to settle the debt in full. The days after the confrontation with Kade swam by in a haze of strained smiles and deflected glances. Threw herself into her duties, nurturing the pups, assisting the healers, anything to escape the torment of her thoughts, or worse, being cornered by Kade. Yet his presence lingered like a phantom limb, a silent weight just beyond her vision. He observed her, a perpetual scowl marring his features. The way she recoiled when he appeared, the brittle courtesy frosting her tone, his actions had clearly left a mark. This realization gnawed at him, a discomfort he usually dismissed as weakness. He'd anticipated what, exactly? Compliance? Adoration? Certainly not this muted sorrow that seemed to cling to her like dew. He also noticed the shifting tides within the pack. Initially, whispers had followed her, fueled by sidelong looks and Lyra's carefully orchestrated campaign of scorn. But Lyra's innate generosity, her eagerness to aid anyone in need, was steadily dismantling their prejudices. He witnessed her patiently guiding a struggling pup in the art of tracking, her deft hands tending a hunter's twisted ankle, her comforting words drying the tears of a bereaved mother. One afternoon, patrolling the fringes of their territory, Kade spotted Lyra by the creek. He'd intended to simply pass, to maintain the careful distance between them. But an unseen force anchored him. He watched her kneel at the waters. Brow knit in concentration, a faint whimper reaching his ears. Cautiously, he approached. Lyra remained oblivious, utterly absorbed in the small creature nestled in her lap. A rabbit, ensnared by a discarded snare. The wire bit deep, and the animal trembled, radiating fear and agony. Lyra crooned to it, her voice a soothing balm, gently stroking its fur. "Easy now, little one," she murmured. "I'm here to help," Kade observed, surprised by the wellspring of tenderness within her. He'd witnessed her strength, her tenacity, but this quiet empathy was a revelation. His pack hunted, killed. He had instilled that in them. But Lyra's purpose transcended domination. She was driven by a profound need to nurture. With painstaking care, she freed the rabbit from the trap. The gash was severe, bleeding freely. Lyra delved into her satchel, producing a clean cloth and a small vial of herbal remedy, knowledge gleaned from her grandmother, famed throughout the land for her mastery of plants and their healing properties. "That's a bad one," Kade stated, his voice jolting her. Lyra startled, nearly fumbling the rabbit, her eyes wide with a mixture of apprehension and surprise. "Found his." "Kade," she breathed, barely audible. He drew nearer, crouching beside her. "Let me see." His hand extended, then hesitated, unsure of her acceptance. After a moment's pause, Lyra nodded, gently angling the rabbit for his inspection. Kade's gaze darkened as he assessed the injury. "It needs stitches," he declared. "I could take it to the pack healers." Lyra demurred. "I can manage it," she countered. "I've done this before." Kade's brow arched, impressed by her self-assurance. "Are you certain?" "Yes," Lyra affirmed, her tone resolute. "But I'll need your assistance." Kade assented, locking his gaze with hers. "What do you require?" For the next hour, they worked as a unit, side by side, their initial unease dissolving into shared purpose. Lyra orchestrated, her voice calm and measured, while Kade held the rabbit steady, his large hands surprisingly gentle. He studied her as she meticulously cleansed the wound, her brow furrowed in intense focus. He noted the unwavering determination in her gaze, the deep compassion infused in her touch. He found himself drawn to her quiet resilience, her unwavering dedication. As she tied off the final stitch, Lyra exhaled in relief. "There," she announced. "That should do it." Kade leaned back, his gaze lingering on her face. "You possess a gift," he remarked, his voice hushed. "A rare affinity for life." A blush crept up Lyra's neck, self-conscious under his praise. "It's nothing, really," she demurred. "Just skills passed down." "It transcends that," Kade insisted. "It's intrinsic to who you are." He paused, adding almost reluctantly, "It's admirable." Lyra looked up, surprised by his pronouncement. She detected a fleeting expression in his eyes, an enigma she couldn't quite decipher. Admiration? Respect? Or merely pity? She was at a loss. Silence descended, broken only by the gentle susurrus of the creek. An undeniable tension thrummed in the air. Lyra felt the frantic cadence of her heart. She knew she shouldn't entertain these feelings. She knew his claim on her was born of spite, devoid of genuine affection. Yet, despite everything, she couldn't suppress the burgeoning warmth she felt in his presence. He was a complex tapestry of brooding intensity and infuriating stubbornness. But he was also undeniably strong, fiercely protective, and, she now suspected, capable of profound kindness. Finally, Kade shattered the silence. "We should return to the pack," he stated, his voice rough. "The hour grows late." Lyra nodded, relieved by the interruption. She carefully swaddled the rabbit in a soft cloth and nestled it in a sheltered alcove near the water. "I'll check on it tomorrow," she promised. They traversed the path back to the packlands in taciturn companionship, the palpable tension between them somewhat diffused. As they neared the forest's edge, Kade halted. He turned to Lyra, his expression an inscrutable mask. "Lyra," he began, his voice low. I owe you an apology." Lyra regarded him, taken aback. "An apology? For what?" "For everything," Kade elaborated. "For claiming you as I did. For forcing you into this situation. I acted impetuously, without weighing the ramifications." Lyra remained silent, uncertain how to proceed. "I realize I cannot undo the past," Kade continued. "But I wish you to know I do value you. You are a contributing member of this pack." Lyra searched his gaze, scrutinizing for any hint of deceit. Was this yet another manipulation? Another attempt to exert control? Or was he speaking with genuine sincerity? She couldn't discern the truth. "Thank you," she responded finally, her voice carefully devoid of inflection. Kade nodded curtly, then pivoted and vanished into the deepening shadows of the woods. Lyra watched him depart, her heart burdened by a storm of conflicting emotions. She desperately wanted to believe him, to believe that he genuinely valued her, that he harbored some semblance of care. But she understood the peril of indulging such hopes. Kade remained tethered to Lyra, their shared history a formidable force capable of extinguishing any burgeoning happiness she dared to imagine. And yet, despite her fears, despite her reservations, a fragile ember of hope flickered within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, something authentic could emerge from this tangled web. Perhaps what began as an act of vengeance could evolve into something more. From the shadows of the packhouse kitchen, Lyra's gaze, sharp as obsidian, followed Lyra. A simmering fury roiled within her as she witnessed Lyra, with effortless grace, calming a fretful pup with a tender melody. The tableau of pure kindness ignited a bitter bile in Lyra's throat. This interloper, this outsider, was insinuating herself into the pack's affections. And Kade, his attention was snared as well. Lyra noted the subtle inclination of his head, the lingering caress of his gaze. The full moon ceremony loomed, a week hence, demanding swift action. Her strategy: isolate, diminish, and remind Kade of what he risked losing. The pack deserved a Luna forged in their traditions, not a tender-hearted healer prone to adopting strays. Mara, a young she-wolf renowned for both her gossip and her unwavering devotion to Lyra, became her initial target. A few carefully chosen words were all it would take. Lyra intercepted her near the training grounds, feigning a stretch. "Mara, my dear," she cooed, her voice laced with disingenuous concern. "Have you observed how deeply Lyra has integrated herself? It almost feels like an attempt to supplant someone." Mara's brow creased with worry. "Supplant who, Lyra?" With a dramatic sigh, Lyra responded, "Oh, I couldn't possibly say, Mara. Perhaps the Luna who dedicated years to this pack? The one steeped in their customs, attuned to their needs, their strengths?" She paused, allowing her words to penetrate. "Doesn't it seem a tad presumptuous for someone who hasn't even undergone her transformation to be advising Kade on matters of the pack?" Mara's eyes widened in alarm. "She's advising Kade?" "Indirectly, of course. He values her medicinal gifts. But is healing the sole requirement for a Luna, Mara? What of fortitude? What of strategy? What of the resolve to safeguard our own, even when faced with agonizing choices?" Lyra felt the seeds of discord taking root, insidious weeds destined to strangle Lyra's burgeoning acceptance. The ensuing days showcased a mastery of subtle sabotage. Accidental collisions in the corridors led to spilled herbal concoctions and murmured apologies from Lyra. Lyra ensured her presence during Lyra's advice, offering her own, often contradictory, opinions with increased volume and authority. During training, she deftly undermined Lyra's suggestions, emphasizing her lack of combat acumen and knowledge of pack warfare. Initially unaware, Lyra began to sense a palpable shift in the pack's demeanor. The welcoming smiles she had grown accustomed to were replaced by curt nods and averted eyes. Veiled barbs, masked as expressions of concern, became commonplace. "Are you certain you're not pushing yourself too hard, Lyra? You appear somewhat wan." Or, "It's such a pity you haven't shifted yet. It must be challenging to truly grasp the pack bond without that experience." This relentless negativity eroded Lyra's confidence. She found herself questioning her every move, hesitating before offering assistance, and withdrawing into herself. The joy she once derived from caring for the pack was gradually replaced by a persistent unease. One evening, while tending the pack's herb garden, Lyra overheard Kira and Brenna, their voices hushed and conspiratorial, near the fence. "Did you hear what Lyra mentioned?" Kira hissed. "About Lyra attempting to alter our traditions? She wants to weaken our training, make us vulnerable." Brenna nodded somberly. "Lyra even said she suggested Kade permit outsiders into our territory. Imagine the pandemonium that would ensue." Lyra's heart plummeted. Outsiders? She had never voiced such an idea. Lyra was intentionally distorting her words, portraying her as a danger to the pack's very fabric. She confronted Lyra later that evening on the training grounds. The air hung heavy with the aroma of damp earth and unspoken hostility. Kade, oblivious, was overseeing a sparring session. "Lyra, we need to speak," Lyra asserted, her voice trembling slightly. Lyra turned, her expression a picture of innocent surprise. "Lyra, darling, what troubles you?" "I overheard Kira and Brenna's conversation. They claimed you said I intended to change our traditions and welcome outsiders into our territory. That's untrue." Lyra's eyes widened with contrived disbelief. "Oh, you must, I would never, such a, you know how rumors spreading them, aren't you?" Lyra challenged, her voice gaining resolve. "You're deliberately turning the pack against me." Lyra's smile flickered, briefly revealing a hint of irritation. "Don't be absurd, Lyra. I'm merely concerned with the pack's well-being. You're a newcomer. You don't comprehend our ways." "I understand manipulation, Lyra, and I understand jealousy." Lyra's eyes blazed with anger. "Jealousy? Of you? Don't overestimate your appeal, little healer." The sound of their raised voices caused Kade to turn. His gaze swept over them, betraying nothing. "What's transpiring here?" he asked, his voice a low growl. Lyra hesitated. She longed to reveal everything, to expose Lyra's deceptions. However, she knew that doing so would only deepen the rift within the pack. She met Kade's gaze, searching for a glimmer of understanding, an indication that he believed her. But his eyes remained cold, distant. "Nothing, Kade," Lyra replied softly. "Just a misunderstanding." Turning away, she left Lyra and Kade standing alone in the training grounds. Kade watched her retreat, his brow furrowed in thought. He had perceived the growing tension, the subtle current of animosity directed at Lyra. He had dismissed it as typical adjustment, the pack's inherent resistance to change. But seeing the hurt etched on Ilara's face, the resignation in her bearing, he began to doubt his judgment. He turned to Lyra, his voice edged with steel. "What was that about?" Lyra returned his gaze, her expression guileless. "Just a minor disagreement, Kade. Ilara is still acclimating to pack life. She can be rather sensitive." Kade scrutinized her, his eyes narrowed. He understood Lyra. He recognized her ambition, her ruthlessness. He also knew the lengths to which she would go to achieve her desires. A seed of suspicion sprouted in his mind. Was Lyra deliberately sabotaging Ilara? And if so, why? He kept his thoughts unspoken. Instead, he commanded, "Ensure it doesn't recur, Lyra." He turned and walked away, leaving Lyra simmering with frustration. She had hoped to make Ilara's existence so unbearable that she would willingly abandon the pack. However, Ilara was proving to be more resilient than she had anticipated, and Kade, his watchful eye, was a constraint. Lyra recognized the need for a shift in her strategy. Subtlety had failed. The time for escalation had arrived. Awakening power, Ilara knelt amidst the fragrant chaos of the herb garden, where lavender and rosemary battled for dominance in the air. Sunbeams warmed her spine as she tended to a drooping sage. A peculiar resonance vibrated beneath her skin, a deep-seated hum that resonated within her very marrow. It had begun, subtly, a mere tingle in her extremities, yet intensified with each passing day since the full moon ritual. Initially, she dismissed it as a byproduct of the new connection with Kade, a lingering echo of their bonded magic. Now, however, it felt distinctly different. A surge of vertigo struck, and she clutched the garden's raised edge to steady herself. The hum escalated, morphing into a profound throb that seemed to emanate from the earth, crawling up her limbs. Behind her closed eyelids, phantasms ignited, coruscating silver light, ancient trees thrumming with vital energy. A lone wolf sprinting beneath the moon's cold gaze. She gasped, the vision shattering as quickly as it formed, leaving her breathless and adrift. "Ilara, everything all right?" Kade's voice sliced through the mental fog. He stood at the garden's threshold, his expression etched with concern. Suddenly, the garden felt stifling, the air oppressive. I don't know," she managed, pushing herself upright. "I felt strange somehow." Kade approached, his gaze scrutinizing her face. He reached out, his hand hovering near her arm, as if sensing the latent energy sparking beneath the surface. "Strange how?" Like I was wired to something," she attempted to articulate. "A current coursing through me, and then a visions, fleeting images." He withdrew his hand, a shadow of something indecipherable flickering in his eyes. "Visions of what, exactly?" "I couldn't quite decipher them," she replied, shaking her head. "But there was light, and colossal trees, and a wolf, running wild." Kade's features hardened. "Stay put," he commanded, his tone curt. He pivoted and strode back towards the pack house, his shoulders rigid with purpose. Confused and unsettled, Ilara sought refuge in the adjacent forest, a haven amongst the venerable trees. The woods had always offered her solace, a sanctuary to escape the judging eyes of the pack and the intricate web of her bond with Kade. She ventured deeper, sunlight filtering through the arboreal ceiling, painting the forest floor with shifting patterns of light and shadow. Reaching a small glade, she discovered a vibrant tapestry of wildflowers in full bloom. Drawn by their allure, she knelt to examine a delicate, azure bluebell. As her fingers neared its fragile petals, the humming resurfaced, amplified. This time, it wasn't merely a sensation, it resembled a torrent of unbridled power surging within her. Without conscious volition, she focused her intent upon the flower, urging it to flourish. A pulse of energy burst forth from her hand, a visible distortion shimmering in the air. The bluebell seemed to respond, its petals subtly unfurling, its color intensifying into a deeper, richer hue. Startled, Lyra recoiled, the surge of power receding as swiftly as it had arrived. She gaped at the flower, her heart hammering against her ribs. Had she truly done that? Could she genuinely manipulate life itself? A dry twig snapped behind her. She spun around, her eyes wide with mingled fear and astonishment. Lyra stood at the edge of the sun-drenched clearing, her face an inscrutable mask. Lyra remained silent, yet her eyes, typically icy and calculating, now held a glint of something bordering on shock. She had witnessed everything unfold. What was that? Lyra finally rasped, her voice a mere breath. Lyra swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. I have no idea, she prevaricated, praying Lyra would dismiss it as an optical illusion. But Lyra remained unconvinced. She advanced into the clearing, her gaze fixed intently upon Lyra. Don't insult my intelligence, Meadowlight. I saw it with my own eyes. You influenced that flower somehow. Lyra retreated a step, her instincts screaming at her to flee. Yet she held her ground, meeting Lyra's gaze with newfound defiance. I haven't the faintest idea what you're talking about. Lyra's lips stretched into a slow, predatory smile. Oh, I suspect you do. And I also suspect this power could prove exceptionally valuable. She paused, her eyes gleaming with avarice. To both of us, of course. Lyra felt a shiver snake down her spine. Lyra's proposition, veiled as it was, felt like a carefully constructed snare. She knew, unequivocally, that any favor Lyra extended would demand an exorbitant price. I want nothing to do with you, Lyra stated firmly, turning to abandon the clearing. Consider the possibilities, Lyra, Lyra called after her, her voice dripping with honeyed menace. With your unique abilities and my extensive knowledge, we could reshape our reality. We could reclaim everything that has been unjustly denied to us. Lyra offered no reply, her pace accelerating as she fled through the dense undergrowth. She remained ignorant of Lyra's cryptic reference to reclaiming what's rightfully ours, yet she knew, with bone-chilling certainty, that Lyra harbored dangerous ambitions, and that she had unwittingly become entangled in their wrong. Trajectory. Back at the pack house, Kade paced his office floor, a restless energy swirling within him. He had contacted the elders, soliciting guidance regarding the visions Lyra had described. Their response had been veiled and ominous, alerting him to a dormant power stirring within her, a power intrinsically linked to the ancient bloodlines of the Blackwood Pack, a power lost to the mists of time for generations. They cautioned him that Lyra would become a target, vulnerable not only to external enemies seeking to exploit her abilities, but also to internal factions within the pack, who viewed her as a threat to their established crupra. Power. He glared out the window, his jaw clenched. His spiteful marking of her to frustrate Lyra had unwittingly placed Lyra at the epicenter of a brewing power struggle. He was bound to protect her, even if that meant pushing her away. Meanwhile, from her vantage point, Lyra watched Lyra's retreating form, a sinister smile gracing her lips. While unsure of the precise nature of Lyra's power, she recognized its significance, and she resolved, with resolute certainty, to discover a means to harness it. Lyra was a pawn, a tool to be deployed in her relentless game of power, and Lyra always emerged victorious. Fractured affections, the reek of pine needles and saturated soil clung to Kade's newly human form, a sharp contrast to the night's frigid kiss on his skin. He loomed at the blackwood perimeter, the impenetrable forest a voiceless confidant to the battle raging within him. A crescent moon, a mere scratch of light in the vast darkness, offered scant solace, elongating shadows into grotesque parodies of the landscape of his mind. Patrols, hunts, the pack's security, these were his obligations. Instead, a woman, initially just a pawn, consumed him. He raked fingers through his unruly hair. The memory of Alara's wide-eyed surprise during their bluebell encounter burned vivid. That flash of wonder, laced with apprehension, had unlocked something unexpected deep inside. Claiming her at the full moon had been calculated, a move to muzzle Lyra and bury the ghosts of his past. But the Bondi, that potent connection, had blindsided him. The instant his mark settled, an undeniable current surged through him, shredding his carefully constructed defenses. The Elder's somber warnings echoed cryptic prophecies whispered in hushed chambers. Lyra wasn't just another pack member. She was a fulcrum, a catalyst to awaken a dormant power within the Blackwood lineage. A power Lyra, driven by naked ambition, clearly sought to control. Kade's gloved fist tightened, the leather groaning under the strain. He was duty-bound to shield her, not simply from Lyra, but from his own nature. The original scheme use, then discard, now seemed an abhorrent betrayal of his core values. Yet, the truth stung. He desired her. More than just the bond's raw pull, it was a profound resonance with a part of himself he thought extinguished. Turning toward the pack house, its distant windows winked in the gloom like inviting stars. He needed to ensure her safety. But approaching, he glimpsed her silhouette in the library window, Lyra's unmistakable form beside her. He stilled, concealed by shadow, eavesdropping. Lyra's normally acid tongue, when directed at Lyra, was now honeyed, almost pleading. Imagine the might we could command, Lyra. United, we could redefine the Blackwood Pack, elevating it beyond imagining. Lyra's reply was a hesitant murmur. I don't know, Lyra. It's all so overwhelming. Don't you understand, Lyra? Kade is exploiting you. He seizes what he wants, then tosses it aside. I know him intimately. Lyra's words were venom, carefully distilled to poison Lyra's insecurities. A wave of wrath surged through Kade, a primal urge to rip Lyra away and expose her deceit. But he resisted, forcing himself to remain hidden. He had to gauge Lyra's reaction. He marked me. Lyra breathed, her voice a fragile thread. That must signify something, surely. Lyra's laugh was brittle, devoid of warmth. A mark is meaningless without authentic connection, Lyra. It's merely a claim, a show of dominance. He intended to wound me, plain and simple. Can't you perceive that? A cold premonition settled in Kade's gut. His actions had consequences he hadn't fully calculated. The damage to Lyra's trust the most devastating. He'd wounded her, manipulated her, leaving her vulnerable to Lyra's predation. He retreated, the library window fading behind him. He couldn't confront her. Not now. Not with the weight of his deception crushing him. He needed distance to safeguard her from his flawed self. He found himself once more at the territory's edge, the wind keening through the branches like a lament. He shifted again, surrendering to the wolf, embracing animalistic instincts as a temporary refuge from the torment within. He ran, a mindless, desperate flight until his lungs screamed and his muscles burned. When he finally returned furred, to human form, dawn's first blush painted the horizon in strokes of rose and gold. He felt gutted, depleted, his heart a cold stone in his chest. He knew the course he had to take. He had to push Lyra away, make her believe their bond was a fallacy, born of his recklessness. It was the only way to ensure her safety. He returned to the pack house, resolve hardening with each stride. He found her in the training yard, practicing with a staff. Her movements flowed with grace, a stark contrast to the unsure girl he'd met initially. He approached, his features masked in cold indifference. "Lyra," he stated, his voice flat and distant. "We need to talk." She stilled, her gaze meeting his. A flicker of anticipation ignited in her eyes, a fragile hope he was about to extinguish. "The marking, it was an error," he declared, the words like ashes in his mouth. "A hasty choice, made in the heat of the moment. It changes nothing." Her face drained of color, the light in her eyes flickering and dying. He witnessed the hurt, the confusion, the betrayal etched on her face. "I understand," she replied softly, her voice barely audible. "I will release you from the bond," he forced out, maintaining his detached facade. "You're free to chart your own course." He turned to depart, unable to endure her wounded gaze. But as he walked away, her voice, clear and strong, sliced through the morning air. "Why, Kade?" she demanded. "Why are you doing this?" He offered no reply. He couldn't. He knew that if he glanced back, if he saw the tears he knew were brimming in her eyes, he would crumble. He would confess everything, reveal the depth of his feelings, and jeopardize his entire purpose. He continued his retreat, her voice a constant echo, a relentless reminder of the sacrifice he was making. But as he reached the pack house, a wave of regret overwhelmed him, a force so profound it nearly brought him to his knees. He had alienated her, severed the delicate connection that had begun to bloom between them. He had prioritized duty over desire, safety over happiness, and in that moment, he realized he had committed the gravest error of his life. Accidents happen. Lyra always sought solace within the forest's embrace, the pack's anxieties dissolving amidst whispering leaves and avian melodies. Yet, the woods radiated a sense of menace today. While gathering herbs near the eastern edge, sunlight fractured by the canopy, a piercing crack fractured the quiet above. Barely a heartbeat passed for Lyra to register the ominous creak of aged wood before a maelstrom of shattered boughs and cascading foliage erupted around her. An immense oak, appearing robust just moments prior, plunged earthward directly in her trajectory. Pure instinct seized her. Lyra hurled herself aside, clambering over gnarled roots and dense undergrowth, the gale generated by the plummeting giant stinging her cheeks. The ground shuddered upon impact, a thunderous roar engulfing the air as the ancient behemoth met its end. A gritty rain of dust and splinters descended, coating everything in a patina of earth. When the tumult subsided, Lyra lay breathless, her pulse a frantic drum against her ribs. She cautiously rose, assessing herself for injuries. Contusions mottled her limbs, yet, miraculously, she remained unscathed, her gaze fixated on the fallen titan, its vast bowl bisecting the path she'd trod only instants before. A tremor traced her spine. This wasn't chance. Trees of that magnitude don't yield without antecedent warning. The specter of Lyra crept into her thoughts, unbidden and chilling. Lyra dusted herself off, the sharp scent of pine and damp soil filling her nostrils. The forest felt tainted. She hastened toward the pack house, the disquieting event casting a pall over her thoughts. That evening, within the bustling communal kitchen, Lyra crafted a simple stew. The fragrance of simmering roots and herbs usually offered comfort, but tonight her composure frayed. She filled a bowl, swirling in a generous spoonful of cream, and sought a secluded nook in the dining hall. Upon the first mouthful, a sharp, metallic tang assaulted her palate. Her stomach twisted. Poison. It was subtle, masked by the savory notes of the stew, yet unmistakable. Lyra expelled the tainted bite into a napkin, her heart a frantic bird in her chest. Panic threatened to engulf her. Who could commit such an act? Who harbored such animosity to taint her sustenance? Again, Lyra's visage intruded. It was becoming disturbingly apparent. Someone sought to inflict harm. She surreptitiously disposed of the stew, rinsing her mouth thoroughly. She couldn't confide in anyone. Not yet. Not without irrefutable proof. To accuse Lyra absent concrete evidence would only exacerbate matters, ignite further discord. Lyra recognized her disadvantage in the pack's intricate power struggles. She must proceed with cunning, with caution. Sleep proved elusive that night. Every groan of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves against her window echoed as a potential threat. She remained vigilant, her senses heightened, reliving the day's sequence of events. The toppling tree, the tainted stew, the likelihood of mere coincidence dwindled to nothing. Meanwhile, Kade occupied his study, the aroma of aged leather and polished beeswax permeating the air. His gaze remained fixed on the scattered reports, though his thoughts drifted elsewhere. He couldn't dismiss the gnawing unease that something was amiss, that Lyra stood in peril. Ever since severing their bond, he had maintained a discreet watch over her. He rationalized it as a safeguard, shielding her from Lyra's animosity, from the darkness within himself. But the quote, stark truth was, the mere thought of harm befalling her was unbearable. A guttural growl resonated within his chest. He had noted Lyra's heightened activity, her subtle machinations, the venomous glances directed at Lyra. He had dismissed them as trivial jealousy, a puerile display of wounded pride. However, the day's occurrences hinted at something far more sinister. He rose from his chair, his movements imbued with fluid purpose. He must investigate, ascertain the truth behind these happenings. He couldn't rely on the pack's rumors or the skewed accounts of his underlings. He needed first-hand observation. Kade moved with the silent grace of a predator, his senses honed, his instincts razor-sharp. He began with the fallen oak, scrutinizing the gashes upon its trunk. The cuts were clean, precise, too deliberate to stem from natural causes. Someone had felled the tree, and they possessed the skill to do so. Next, he navigated to the kitchen, his nostrils twitching, discerning the residual scents. He detected a faint whiff of bitter almond extract, a common component in poisons. His jaw clenched. This was no accident. Malevolence was at play. He had underestimated Lyra, her potential for cruelty. He had allowed personal sentiment to cloud his judgment, and Lyra was now paying the price. He discovered Lyra seated alone on the porch, gazing out at the moon-bathed forest. She appeared fragile, vulnerable, a stark contrast to the vibrant, resilient woman he had come to admire. He approached with care, his voice modulated to a gentle tone. Lyra, he began, recount the events of today. Lyra hesitated, her eyes reflecting a blend of fear and defiance. She had sought to protect him, to shield him from the pack's intrigues and machinations. But she could no longer deny the truth. She needed his assistance. Her voice trembled faintly as she described the toppling tree and the tainted stew. Kade listened in silence, his countenance growing stern with each passing word. Upon her conclusion, he reached out, clasping her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "You should have confided in me sooner," he said, his tone laced with steel. I will address this." Lyra looked up, her eyes searching his. "What action will you take?" she inquired. "I'm going to uncover the identity of the perpetrator," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "And they will face the consequences of their actions." He refrained from uttering Lyra's name, but the object of his suspicion was mutual. The dynamics had shifted. What commenced as a political maneuver, a calculated act of retribution, had spiraled into something far more perilous. And Kade would spare no effort to safeguard Lyra, even if it demanded unleashing the full extent of his power. Rogue attacked the air hung thick and heavy, with the scent of pine and damp earth, as Lyra and Kade patrolled the blackwood border. A deceptive calm settled over the forest, the birds silent, the usual rustle of small creatures absent. Lyra, despite the unease prickling her skin, focused on matching Kade's steady pace, her senses heightened, searching for anything amiss. She'd insisted on joining him today, needing to prove to herself, and perhaps to him, that she wasn't some fragile ornament to be kept locked away. Kade, his jaw clenched, scanned the perimeter, his movements fluid and predatory. He hadn't wanted her here, not with the threat still hanging over them. But her stubborn determination, mirrored in her vibrant green eyes, had won him over. He knew he couldn't coddle her forever. She was growing stronger by the day, and this patrol, under his watchful gaze, was a necessary step. The silence shattered. A guttural snarl ripped through the air, followed by the snapping of twigs and the pounding of paws. Rogue wolves. Lyra counted at least 6, their eyes glowing with feral hunger, their forms gaunt and scarred. They were clearly desperate, driven by starvation and a reckless disregard for Blackwood territory. "Stay behind me," Kade growled, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through Lyra. He shifted, his bones cracking and reforming as he transformed into his massive black wolf form. The rogues hesitated for a split second, intimidated by his size and power, but their desperation quickly overcame their fear. Lyra didn't hesitate. She shifted too, her own transformation swift and practiced now, though her smaller silver wolf form was dwarfed by Kade. She knew she couldn't match his raw strength, but she had other weapons, other abilities she was only beginning to understand. The rogues attacked, a snarling, snapping wave of fur and teeth. Kade met them head-on, a whirlwind of black fur and lethal claws. He moved with a savage grace, tearing into the rogues, protecting Lyra with his body. Lyra, meanwhile, darted around the edges of the fight, using her agility to her advantage. She nipped at their heels, distracting them, drawing their attention away from Kade. One of the rogues, larger and more aggressive than the others, broke through Kade's defenses and lunged at Lyra. She yelped, dodging his snapping jaws, but he was too fast. He caught her shoulder, his teeth tearing through her fur and skin. Pain seared through her, sharp and burning. Kade roared in fury, his black fur bristling. He slammed into the rogue, sending him flying, then turned back to Lyra, his eyes filled with concern. "Lyra, I'm fine," she gasped, ignoring the blood welling up on her shoulder. She knew they didn't have time for coddling. More rogues were closing in. They fought back to back, a silver and black whirlwind against the tide of brown and gray. Kade took the brunt of the attack, his powerful body absorbing blow after blow, while Lyra used her speed and agility to harass the rogues, weakening them, creating openings for Kade. But the rogues were relentless. They kept coming, driven by their hunger and desperation. Lyra felt her strength waning, her shoulder throbbing with pain. She knew they couldn't hold out much longer. Suddenly, a rogue managed to get past Kade, leaping toward her, jaws open, intent on ending the fight. Lyra braced herself with the impact, fear momentarily paralyzing her. Then, a surge of energy erupted from within her, a raw, untamed force she barely understood. The air around her shimmered, distorting the light. The rogue faltered, his eyes widening in confusion. Then he was thrown back, slammed against a tree with bone-jarring force. Lyra stared at her paws, trembling. She hadn't consciously done anything. It was as if her power had reacted instinctively, protecting her from harm. Kade, who had witnessed the event, stared at her, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. He saw the raw power radiating from her, the energy that seemed to bend reality around her. The remaining rogues, sensing the shift in power, hesitated. Their hunger was still there, but it was now tempered by fear. They glanced at each other, then, as one, turned and fled into the forest. Kade watched them go, then turned back to Lyra, his gaze intense. "What was that?" he demanded, his voice rough. Lyra shook her head, still reeling from the surge of power. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "It just happened." Kade approached her cautiously, sniffing at her wound. "You're hurt," he said, his voice softening. He gently nudged her towards him, his large body shielding her from the wind. Lyra leaned into him, grateful for his warmth and protection. The fight had been brutal, terrifying, but it had also revealed something new about herself, something powerful and potentially dangerous. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice muffled against his fur. "For protecting me." Kade nuzzled her neck, his breath warm against her skin. "I will always protect you, Lyra," he said, his voice low and sincere. "But you need to understand your power. It could be the key to our survival or our destruction." He shifted back into his human form, pulling her close, his arms wrapping around her tightly. "We need to get you back to the pack house. The healers can tend to your wound." As they walked back through the forest, the earlier unease had been replaced by something heavier, something more complex. The rogue attack had been a stark reminder of the dangers lurking outside the Blackwood borders, but it had also revealed a new and potentially even greater threat within Lyra herself. The bond between them had been tested, forged in the heat of battle, but the questions remained. Could they trust this bond? Could they control her power? And could they face the darkness that was closing in around them? Respect earned, the air vibrated, not only with the echoes of Lyra's unleashed power, but with a sharp tang of fear and surging adrenaline. Kade, still reeling from witnessing her capabilities, observed as she moved with a newfound assuredness. The hesitant gait, the questioning glances, had vanished. In their place was a force, a whirlwind of deliberate action. He'd initially written her off as a liability on patrol, a misguided attempt at self-validation. He couldn't have been more wrong. A particularly large rogue wolf broke from the pack, aiming directly for Kade. He sidestepped the rush with practiced ease, fangs bared, ready to rip flesh. But Lyra intercepted. Eschewing a direct confrontation, she snatched up a fallen branch, employing it as a fulcrum against the wolf's foreleg. A sickening snap resonated through the woods, and the rogue emitted a pained yelp, staggering backward. It was a deceptively simple, almost graceful maneuver, yet undeniably effective. Kade finished the creature, a guttural growl rumbling in his throat. He kept his attention fixed on Lyra. Her breathing came in ragged gasps, her face flushed with exertion, but her eyes remained keen, scanning for further threats. She wasn't merely reacting, she was anticipating. "West!" she yelled, indicating the direction with the broken branch. "They're trying to outflank us." Kade followed her line of sight. 2 more rogues were indeed attempting to circle around, using the dense undergrowth as concealment. He snapped commands to the other pack members, who immediately adjusted their positions. The attempted encirclement was neutralized before it gained traction. He fought with a redoubled intensity, spurred by an odd combination of protectiveness and admiration. Each fallen rogue was a testament to Lyra, small yet indomitable, holding her own against overwhelming odds. He glimpsed her tripping another, sending it sprawling into the path of a waiting patrol member. He watched her distract a wolf just long enough for Liam to deliver the killing strike. She wasn't just surviving, she was proving invaluable. She was a warrior. Finally, the last rogue tucked its tail between its legs and bolted, vanishing into the thick wilderness. The Blackwood patrol stood gasping, bruised and battered, but victorious. The ensuing silence was profound, punctuated only by the ragged inhalations of the werewolves. Kade assessed the aftermath, his gaze drawn back to Lyra. She was tending to a gash on Liam's arm, her touch gentle and precise. He approached cautiously, his emotions a jumbled mess. He struggled to find the right words, to properly acknowledge her contribution. "You okay?" he managed, his voice rough. Lyra glanced up, her expression guarded. "I'm fine," she replied. "Liam needs attention." "He'll mend," Kade countered, his gaze unwavering. "You fought admirably." The words felt inadequate, clumsy, but genuinely felt. He'd underestimated her resolve. Her spirit. Lyra's eyes searched his, probing for sincerity. "I did what needed to be done," she said softly. "More," Kade amended. He hesitated, hand hovering near her arm, suppressing the urge to touch her, to ground himself in her reality. "You saved lives tonight, Lyra." Liam, overhearing, nodded emphatically. "She did, Alpha. That flanking maneuver we'd have been caught off guard without her." Other patrol members echoed his sentiment, their faces etched with new respect. Kade saw it in their faces. The earlier hostility, the ingrained skepticism, had given way to something else, something akin to acceptance. He turned back to Lyra, his gaze softening. "Thank you," he murmured, barely audible. A subtle smile graced her lips. "We're a pack, Kade," she reminded him. "We safeguard each other." In that instant, amidst the carnage of battle, something shifted subtly between them. It transcended simple gratitude or even respect. It was a deeper understanding, a shared crucible that had forged a tenuous connection. He perceived a strength in her he hadn't acknowledged before, a tenacity that mirrored his own. With unsettling clarity, he realized Lyra was no mere pawn in his schemes. She was a force to be reckoned with, a woman capable of endless surprises. And that, perhaps more than anything, filled him with a quiet dread. The return to Blackwood territory proceeded in silence. Lyra rode at his side, her presence a reassuring weight. He could sense the pack's stares, hear the whispers trailing them. But he paid them no mind. He knew the dynamic had shifted. Upon arriving at the pack house, Lyra was waiting, her face a carefully constructed mask of suppressed fury. She watched Kade dismount, then fixed her gaze on Lyra. "Well, well," she drawled, her voice dripping venom. "Look what the cat dragged in. I see you survived your little escapade." Lyra met her stare without blinking. "I did," she stated plainly. Lyra's eyes narrowed to slits. I heard you played the valiant heroine out there. Seeking accolades, are we? I helped protect the pack, Lyra responded, her voice unwavering. As any member should. Lyra's laughter was a frigid, brittle sound. Don't get any delusions of grandeur, human. You're nothing but a temporary amusement. Kade stepped forward, interposing himself between Lyra and Lyra. But's enough, Lyra, he growled, a warning rumble. Is it? Lyra challenged, her eyes blazing. Or are you finally starting to realize the magnitude of your mistake? Kade ignored her, turning to Lyra. Go inside, he instructed softly. Get some rest. Lyra hesitated a moment, then nodded. She walked past Lyra without a word, her chin held high. As she disappeared into the pack house, Lyra turned her full fury on Kade. You're a fool, Kade, she hissed, her voice laced with malice. She's vulnerable. She's human. She'll be your undoing. She possesses resilience you underestimate, Kade countered, his voice low and dangerous. And she's under my protection. He turned and strode away, leaving Lyra standing alone in the courtyard, her face twisted with unrestrained rage. He knew he had gained a formidable adversary, but he also knew he would move heaven and earth to keep Lyra safe, even if it meant confronting the combined might of his pack, even if it meant battling the darkness within his own soul. The reason remained unclear, yet his resolve was absolute. Vulnerability shared the quiet within Kade's study felt oppressive, thicker than the usual blend of wood polish and evergreen. Lyra's fingers glided over the elaborate carvings edging the imposing desk of Blackwood Alphas. The oak softened by generations of touch. The patrol's triumph already felt like a faded memory, swallowed by the disquiet brewing within her. Kade, she breathed, her voice barely audible. Do you second-guess yourself? He leaned against the window frame, the last rays of daylight sculpting his features, emphasizing the severe lines and the fierce depths of his gaze. He looked a creature hewn from the night, powerful even in stillness. An alpha rarely has the privilege of doubt, he responded, his voice a resonant baritone. Decisions are necessities, and consequences inevitable. Lyra winced internally but persisted. But if the decision, what if I'm the decision, and you question it? Kade unfolded from the windowsill, his eyes holding Haz. He closed the distance between them, the sound of his boots absorbed by the deep pile of the rug. He halted mere feet away, close enough for her to feel the vital warmth emanating from him, to inhale his uniquely wild and compelling scent. What is your meaning, Lyra? A steadying breath filled her lungs as she met his unwavering stare. His silver eyes seemed to dissect her, peeling away every layer of pretense. I'm asking if you regret choosing me, if you rue the binding. His face remained impassive, yet she detected a fleeting expression, surprise perhaps, or even a shadow of pain flickering in the depths of his irises. Regret serves no purpose. It alters nothing. But does it exist? She pressed. For you, I mean. Because sometimes, Kade, I look at this pack, at Lyra, at all that's expected of a Luna, and I'm not sure I'm up to the task. I don't know if I'm resilient enough. She finally averted her gaze, unable to sustain the intensity of his scrutiny. Her focus landed on her intertwined hands, her knuckles bone white. I had no preparation for this existence. I wasn't trained. I'm ignorant of the customs. The protocols. I barely knew how to throw a punch before you shoved me into the forest with those rogues. A sardonic smile twisted her lips. He lowered himself before her, enfolding her hands within his. His touch was surprisingly gentle, a comforting haven. "Look at me, Lyra." A moment of hesitation, then she lifted her eyes to his. "Everything you lack in instruction, you more than compensate for in spirit," he countered, his voice softening into a near caress. "You possess a fortitude I haven't encountered in anyone, not even Lyra. You confronted those rogues with unwavering bravery, you shielded the pack, and you did so with a blend of courage and empathy. Such qualities are innate, impossible to instill." "But what if it's insufficient?" she murmured. "What if I fail you? What if I fail the pack?" He tightened his grip on her hands. "You won't, because you won't be alone in this. I will remain by your side at every turn." His words offered solace, yet they couldn't dispel the lingering uncertainty coiled within her. Insecurities clung to her, familiar companions, like old scars. "I was always the unobtrusive one," she confessed, the words spilling out in a rush. "The one who faded into the scenery. My parents, they weren't pack-born. They found each other. They carved out a life on the periphery. They were happy, but they also," she faltered, searching for the precise words. "They lived under the weight of constant fear. Fear of exposure, fear of being different. And that dread imprinted itself upon you," Kade concluded, his eyes filled with understanding. She gave a slight nod. "I always felt like an outsider, never quite belonging. Not among humans, and not wholly with the pack. I existed in a liminal space. And now I'm expected to assume the mantle of Luna. It feels like a cruel jest." A muscle twitched in Kade's jawline. "This is no jest, Lyra. You are my chosen mate. Your destiny lies here." "But what if I don't desire it?" The words hung suspended in the air, heavy with unacknowledged trepidation. He didn't respond at once. He rose to his feet, drawing her up with him. He guided her toward the window, where the dying light painted the heavens in shades of bronze and amethyst. He enveloped her from behind, drawing her close, her back flush against his chest. The familiar security of his presence eased some of her worry. "You possess agency, Lyra," he said, his voice a hushed murmur against her hair. "You always will. You retain the option to leave, to sever the binding, and to reclaim your previous life. I won't impede you." Her breath hitched in her throat. He would release her? The concept was both petrifying and strangely freeing. "However," he continued, his embrace tightening, "if you elect to remain, if you embrace your fate, then I pledge to stand unwavering by your side. I will offer you protection, even from myself. I will impart all the necessary knowledge. And together we will navigate whatever trials lie ahead." She leaned back into him, drawing courage from his touch. "And Lyra?" she asked, her tone tinged with bitterness. "Lyra constitutes a threat," he conceded. "But she is my conflict to resolve. Your focus should be on evolving into the Luna you are destined to become. I will attend to the remainder." His words were intended to reassure, yet she knew the reality would be far more intricate. Lyra would not simply vanish. She would struggle, manipulate, and resort to any measures necessary to reclaim her position. Lyra realized she needed to prepare herself for the coming storm. "Tell me about your parents," Kade urged, breaking the ensuing stillness. "Tell me about the nature of their fear." She hesitated, then began to speak, a cascade of memories and emotions she had long suppressed now pouring forth. She recounted the story of their modest cottage on the forest's fringe, the perpetual drawn curtains, the muted conversations, and the constant vigilance against discovery. She spoke also of the joy they had found in each other's company, their deep affection for the natural world, and the lessons they had imparted to her, lessons of kindness and empathy. As she narrated, Kade remained a steadfast listener, his arms enfolding her securely, his presence a silent vow of support. He didn't interrupt, didn't pass judgment, didn't offer empty platitudes. He merely listened, providing a haven for her vulnerability. By the time she reached the end of her story, the sky had deepened into a rich sapphire, and the first glimmering stars had begun to emerge. She felt lighter, as though a weight had been lifted from her soul. "Thank you," she whispered, pivoting in his arms to face him. He framed her face with his hands, his thumbs gently caressing the contours of her cheekbones. "Gratitude is unnecessary between us, Lyra. Our fates are intertwined, yours and mine. Your burdens become mine, and mine become yours." He inclined his head and kissed her, the kiss lingering and tender, resonating with an unexpected depth of emotion. It was a kiss that communicated understanding, acceptance, and the dawning awareness of a connection that transcended the forced binding. When their lips finally parted, a spark of hope ignited within her breast. Perhaps, just perhaps, she possessed the strength to navigate this path. Perhaps she could become the Luna the Blackwood Pack deserved. And perhaps, just perhaps, she could discover happiness with Kade, even amidst the dangers and uncertainties that lay ahead. Secrets revealed. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the stone walls of Kade's private study. The air, thick with unspoken words, hung heavy between them. Lyra watched him, her heart a tangled knot of apprehension and burgeoning understanding. He stood by the window, the moonlight painting him in shades of silver and gray, a stark picture of solitary strength. "Lyra and I," he began, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the room. "We were expected, destined, some might say. Our families had arranged the match since we were pups. It was about solidifying power, uniting power. Bloodlines." He turned, his gaze meeting hers, a flicker of something unreadable in his dark eyes. Love wasn't really part of the equation. Lyra shifted, the plush velvet of the armchair doing little to ease the prickle of discomfort beneath her skin. She imagined a young Kade, already burdened by the weight of his future, forced into a mold that didn't quite fit. Did you care for her?" He hesitated, a muscle ticking in his jaw. "I thought I did. Or, at least, I thought I could. She was beautiful, ambitious, everything an alpha's mate was supposed to be. We shared a history, a common understanding of the pack's expectations." He paused, taking a deep breath. "But there was always a distance, a calculation in her eyes that I couldn't quite decipher." "What happened?" Lyra prompted softly, sensing the pain that laced his words. Kade walked towards the fire, his movements restless. The pack demanded an heir, and when the years passed and none came, the pressure mounted. Lyra resented the whispers, the doubts cast upon her. She started changing, growing colder, more ruthless. Power became her obsession. He stopped, his gaze fixed on the flames. "She blamed me, said I wasn't strong enough, wasn't worthy of carrying on the Blackwood line." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She could imagine the venom, the sharp barbs aimed to wound. "That's cruel." "Cruel, but perhaps not entirely untrue," Kade admitted, his voice tinged with a self-deprecating bitterness. "Being alpha isn't just about strength, Lyra. It's about strategy, about making difficult choices." about sacrificing personal happiness for the good of the pack, and I struggled with that. I saw the manipulations, the power plays, the compromises that were necessary, and I hated it. He turned to her, his eyes holding a raw vulnerability that she hadn't seen before. Lyra thrived on it. She reveled in the control, the influence. She wanted to shape the pack in her image, to rule alongside me, not as a partner, but as a puppet master. So you resisted? Lyra ventured, piecing together the fragments of the story. I did. I refused to become a pawn in her game. I challenged her decisions, questioned her motives, and the more I pushed back, the more she resented me. Our arguments became volatile, filled with accusations, betrayals. He closed his eyes briefly, as if trying to shut out the memories. Eventually, it became clear that we were no longer fighting for the same cause. We were fighting each other. And the separation, was it mutual? Lyra asked, knowing the answer before he spoke. Kade shook his head. She wouldn't relinquish her position easily. She saw herself as the rightful Luna, regardless of our personal feelings. It took a confrontation, a challenge. In front of the entire pack, I had to prove that I was strong enough to lead without her, that my vision for the Blackwood pack was the right one. Lyra could only imagine the spectacle, the tension, the sheer force of will required to publicly denounce his intended mate. That must have been devastating. It was, Kade conceded, for both of us. But it was necessary. The pack was fracturing, loyalty was divided. I had to make a choice between tradition and what I believed was right, between Lyra and the future of Blackwood. He walked towards her, his gaze intense. Lyra never forgave me. She saw my rejection as a personal affront, a humiliation that she would never forget, and she's been determined to make me pay ever since. Lyra met his gaze, understanding dawning in her eyes. So that's why she hates me so much. It's not just about losing her position as Luna. It's about you choosing me, someone she considers inferior. She sees you as a threat, Kade confirmed, his voice low. A symbol of my defiance, of my rejection of everything she stands for, and she will do anything to eliminate that threat. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine, despite the warmth of the fire. But why me, Kade? Why did you choose me? You could have chosen anyone. He reached out, taking her hand in his. His touch was warm, grounding. I told you before, Lyra, there was something about you, a spark, a strength that I recognized. You weren't afraid to speak your mind, to challenge me, even when everyone else was cowering in fear. And you saw through my facade. You saw the man beneath the alpha, the one who was struggling to reconcile his duty with his desires. He squeezed her hand gently. And there was something else. Something I couldn't explain. A pull that I couldn't deny. A connection that transcended logic and reason. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She looked into his eyes, searching for the truth. And she saw it there, reflected in the depths of his gaze. A vulnerability, a longing, a genuine affection that she had never dared to hope for. Kade, she whispered, her voice barely audible. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her cheek. I know this is difficult, Lyra. I know I've put you in a dangerous position, but I promise you, I will protect you. I will do everything in my power to keep you safe from Lyra, from anyone who threatens you. And if I want to leave? She asked, the question trembling on her lips. He hesitated, his grip on her hand tightening. Then I will let you go. I won't force you to stay where you're not happy, where you don't feel safe. He looked at her, his gaze unwavering. But I hope you'll choose to stay, Lyra, because I need you, more than you know. Lyra stared into his eyes, seeing the truth of his words. The Alpha, the protector, the man who had claimed her to spite his ex, was now laying bare his soul. And in that moment, she knew that whatever the future held, she wasn't ready to walk away. Not yet. The trial of Worth Beta, his expression a rigid mask of duty, delivered the summons. The parchment, stiff and unyielding, bore the Blackwood crest, a stark declaration etched against the creamy surface. Even before Gregor's words, Lyra knew. The council demands your immediate presence, Lyra Meadowlight. The usual respectful cadence was absent, replaced by a tone that sent a ripple of unease through her. Beside her, Kade's features hardened. What's the meaning of this? His voice, a low rumble, thrummed with suppressed power, the air itself seeming to vibrate with his barely restrained anger. Intimidated but resolute, Gregor held his ground. A trial of worth, Alpha. To ascertain Lyra's suitability as your mate, as dictated by ancient pack law. The words drained the color from Lyra's cheeks. A trial of worth. She'd only heard it spoken of in hushed tones. A barbaric custom. A vestige of a bygone era when alphas reigned supreme. It was typically invoked for situations exactly like this. An alpha choosing a mate deemed unsuitable by the old guard. Someone, she realized, not from the established influential families, like Lyra's. A dangerous light sparked in Kade's eyes. The pack has accepted my choice. With all due respect, Alpha. Gregor pressed on. Certain misgivings linger. The council feels compelled to safeguard the strength and continuity of the Blackwood bloodline. This is for the pack's benefit. He offered a perfunctory bow, devoid of genuine respect, before departing, leaving a thick silence in his wake. This reeks of Lyra. Kade spat, his fists clenched tight. She's manipulating the council, preying on all their antiquated fears. Lyra laid a hand on his arm, her fingers trembling slightly. What does it involve? This trial? Kade turned, his gaze softening as he focused on her. It varies, he admitted, his voice roughened with concern. Tests of strength, skill, intellect sometimes, sheer resilience. It's brutal. He paused, a shadow of doubt flickering across his strong features. It is designed to break your spirit, Lyra. Then it will fail, she declared, surprised by the steel in her own voice. She held his intense gaze, refusing to yield. I will not give them that victory. The ensuing days dissolved into a frenzy of preparation. Despite his simmering rage, Kade channeled his energy into bolstering her readiness. He drilled her relentlessly in combat, pushing her beyond her perceived limits, refining the self-defense techniques she'd previously learned. He quizzed her on intricate pack lore, its history, and its strategic nuances. He even arranged for her to spar with some of the pack's most seasoned Dashwa warriors, individuals who initially regarded her with scorn, but slowly began to acknowledge her unwavering determination. But it wasn't solely about physical and intellectual refinement. Lyra also dedicated herself to the tutelage of the pack's healer, absorbing knowledge of herbs, remedies, and the delicate equilibrium of the Blackwood ecosystem. While she knew she couldn't hope to equal the knowledge of one born to the pack, she aimed to demonstrate her eagerness to learn, her dedication to embracing her role. Meanwhile, Lyra lurked in the periphery, a subtle smile curving her lips. She attended council meetings, her voice a melodious whisper as she subtly steered the discussions, ensuring the trial would be particularly challenging. She suggested ordeals designed to exploit Lyra's vulnerabilities, highlighting her inexperience, her status as an outsider. One evening, Lyra sought out Lyra on the training grounds, where she was practicing archery. The evening air hung heavy with the scent of pine needles and damp earth, the fading sun painting long, distorted shadows across the clearing. Lyra's arrows found their mark with increasing precision. But Lyra knew that marksmanship was but a single insignificant facet of the trials to come. "Impressive," Lyra purred, her tone smooth as polished jade. "You've certainly been diligent, though one wonders if mere skill will suffice." Lyra lowered her bow, her gaze sharpening. "What are you implying?" Lyra shrugged, feigning innocence. "Oh, nothing of consequence. Merely the Council harbors grave concerns for the Blackwood lineage. They require absolute certainty that the Luna can shoulder the mantle of responsibility, the relentless pressure. I understand one of the trials will involve negotiating a trade treaty with the neighboring Silverstream pack. A pack renowned for its difficult temperament." She paused for effect, allowing her words to permeate the air. "They're known for their unorthodox tactics. It demands years of experience, a comprehensive grasp of pack politics. A pity you've lacked such opportunities, Lyra." Lyra's jaw clenched. The Silverstream pack. Kade had spoken of them with caution. Cutthroat negotiators, famous for capitalizing on any perceived weakness. This wasn't about trade. It was a calculated power play. "I'll manage," Lyra stated, her voice unwavering despite the sudden knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. Lyra smiled, a flash of predatory triumph in her eyes. "I'm certain you will endeavor to. But remember, Lyra, some boundaries are simply insurmountable. Some roles are best reserved for those born to inherit them." With that, she turned and glided away, leaving Lyra alone in the encroaching darkness, the weight of the impending challenge pressing down on her. The day of the trial broke gray and somber, mirroring the apprehensive mood gripping the pack. The entire Blackwood population assembled in the central clearing, a sea of watchful faces fixed on Lyra as she stood before the council. Kade stood steadfast at her side, his presence a silent bulwark of support, his eyes a burning warning to any who dared display disrespect. The council elder, her face etched with the wisdom of ages, stepped forward. "Lyra Meadowlight," she proclaimed, her voice resonating across the clearing. "You stand before us to prove your worthiness as mate to Alpha Kade Blackwood and Luna of the Blackwood Pack. These trials will test the limits of your strength, your intellect, and your fortitude. May the spirit of the pack be your guide." The first trial tested her physical prowess, a punishing obstacle course designed to assess her speed, agility, and stamina. She scaled towering walls, traversed treacherous terrain, and repelled simulated ambushes, pushing her body to its absolute limit. The pack observed in silence, their expressions inscrutable. The second trial engaged her intellect, a battery of riddles, puzzles, and strategic challenges to gauge her knowledge and problem-solving abilities. She answered questions about nuanced pack history, deciphered cryptic runes, and formulated battle plans, drawing upon every sliver of information she'd absorbed in recent weeks. But it was the third trial that truly filled her with dread. The negotiation with the Silverstream pack. She was escorted to a designated neutral zone, a small clearing straddling the border between the two territories. There, she confronted Alpha Theron of the Silverstream Pack, a man whose eyes held the chilling glint of glacial ice. Lyra Meadowlight. Theron greeted her, his voice a guttural growl. You are here to discuss a trade agreement. The terms are straightforward. We demand access to your pack's silver mines. In return, we shall offer you protection. Lyra swallowed, her throat suddenly parched. Protection. A thinly veiled threat, dripping with arrogance. The Silverstream Pack had been encroaching upon Blackwood land for years, probing their defenses. This was not a purple, genuine offer of trade. It was a blatant attempt at intimidation. The Blackwood Pack requires no protection, Lyra countered, her voice surprisingly firm. We are more than capable of defending our own borders. Theron chuckled, a sound devoid of warmth. Perhaps. But your alpha is preoccupied. And you, Luna, you are inexperienced. Lyra locked her gaze with his, refusing to yield. We are willing to entertain the possibility of a mutually beneficial trade agreement. Access to our silver mines in exchange for resources that would serve our needs. However, we will not be subjected to bullying or coercion. The negotiations stretched into an interminable slog, a tense ballet of veiled threats and carefully chosen words. Theron deployed every manipulative tactic at his disposal, attempting to exploit her perceived inexperience, to erode her confidence. But Lyra held her ground, drawing upon an inner wellspring of strength, her sharp intellect, and her unshakable faith in the Blackwood Pack. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she brokered a deal. It was not ideal, perhaps, but it was equitable, a compromise that safeguarded the Blackwood Pack's interests without succumbing to the Silverstream Pack's aggressive demands. As she returned towards Blackwood territory, exhausted but triumphant, she found Kade waiting for her at the edge of the forest. His eyes shone with a mixture of pride and profound relief. You did it, he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. You faced them down, and you prevailed. Lyra leaned against him, drawing strength from his unwavering presence. I couldn't have done it without you, she murmured softly. Yet, even as she uttered those words, a part of her knew they weren't entirely accurate. Kade had prepared her, steadfastly supported her, but in the end, it was her own mettle, her resilience, that had carried her across the finish line. She had weathered the trial of worth, and she had emerged victorious. But the battle, she suspected, had only just begun. Lyra's influence, she understood, would remain a persistent threat. False accusations. A charged atmosphere vibrated through the council hall, thick with apprehension and simmering ire. Lyra faced the elder assembly, spine ramrod straight, her gaze unwavering despite the inner storm. Stained glass windows cast fractured rainbows across the stone floor, a cruel jest against her grim predicament. Lyra, radiating self-righteousness, advanced. Her silver hair shimmered like spun moonlight, a sharp contrast to the encroaching shadows. Venerable elders, she began, her tone honed with practiced conviction. We convene today to judge Lyra's fitness for the Luna position. We've observed her attempts to meet the established criteria. However, disquieting rumors have reached my ears, casting a pall over her integrity. Lyra's stomach tightened. She had anticipated Lyra's schemes, the subtle shifts in pack dynamics, the furtive glances dogging her steps. Yet, she'd clung to the hope, perhaps foolishly, that her dedication, her sincere desire to serve the Blackwood Pack, would speak volumes. With calculated drama, Lyra produced several time-worn parchments. These documents, she proclaimed, brandishing them, were recently discovered near the Silverstream border. They detail a series of secret rendezvous between Lyra Meadowlight and Silverstream representatives, predating the official negotiations she so proudly claims as a triumph. A collective intake of breath swept through the hall. Lyra's blood turned to ice. The parchments were undoubtedly forgeries, the script a cleverly mimicked version of her own, the dates meticulously selected to align with her border training exercises. "These meetings," Lyra pressed, her voice dripping with accusation, "suggest collusion, a betrayal of the Blackwood Pack. They imply Lyra was bartering with Silverstream for personal advancement, perhaps offering strategic advantages in exchange for what? Acceptance? Dominance?" A swell of murmurs erupted among the council, faces hardening with nascent suspicion. Bedabram, usually an impassive figure, shifted uncomfortably, his gaze now tinged with doubt as he regarded Lyra. Even Alpha Kade, a rigid presence beside her, his features an unreadable mask, projected a palpable tension. "This is preposterous," Lyra retorted, her voice ringing out. "These documents are falsified. I never met with Silverstream representatives prior to the formal talks. This is a transparent attempt to smear me." Lyra merely smiled, a serenely chilling expression that sent tremors down Lyra's spine. "Do you deny this is your handwriting, Lyra? Do you deny being near the Silverstream border on those dates?" Lyra hesitated. She couldn't deny proximity to the border, her drills demanded it. And the handwriting, it was disturbingly close to her own. "I was training," she insisted. "But I met no one. I've been framed." "Perhaps," Lyra conceded, her voice coated in false sympathy. "But the evidence is suggestive, and the timing is unfortunate. Silverstream conceded far too easily during negotiations. Many questioned their sudden compliance. Now it seems we understand why." The murmurs intensified, coalescing into an angry buzz. Pack members who had tentatively begun to embrace Lyra now glared at her with unveiled hostility. The nascent camaraderie, the fragile bonds she had painstakingly cultivated, seemed to disintegrate before her very eyes. A scarred and weathered warrior, his voice a gravelly rumble, stepped forward. "Is this true, Lyra? Did you sell us out?" Lyra met his gaze, her heart aching with betrayal. This was Gareth, a warrior she had aided during a training session, one who had shown her a rare flicker of respect. "No, Gareth," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I would never betray the Blackwood Pack. This is a fabrication." But her words seemed lost to the wind. The pack, swayed by Lyra's carefully woven narrative, was turning as a single entity against her. She felt their distrust, their animosity, their burgeoning rage. Alpha Kade remained impassive, his gaze fixed on Lyra, his expression unreadable. Lyra desperately sought his backing, his reassurance, but he offered nothing. His silence was a deafening indictment, a devastating blow that threatened to break her spirit. Lyra seized the moment, her voice ringing with triumphant resolution. "The evidence is irrefutable. Lyra Meadowlight is unfit to serve as Luna. She has shattered the Blackwood Pack's trust. I implore the Council to reconsider her position and restore order to our ranks." The council members nodded grimly, their faces etched with disapproval. The chamber's atmosphere had irrevocably soured. Lyra, who had so recently tasted triumph, now teetered on the brink of utter ruin. She felt isolated, utterly alone, encircled by adversaries eager to see her fall. The weight of their judgment, the sting of their treachery, was almost unbearable. The false accusations, the manufactured evidence, had transformed her into a traitor, a manipulator, a threat to the very foundation of the Blackwood Pack. Kade finally turned, his eyes dark and unfathomable. "Lyra," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "do you have anything to say in your defense?" Lyra stared at him, her heart twisting with unfamiliar pain. He wasn't defending her. He wasn't standing by her. He was offering her a chance to condemn herself. "I am innocent," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I swear on my life, I am innocent." But her words were swallowed by the rising tide of animosity. The council exchanged glances, their verdict already sealed. Lyra smiled, a predatory, victorious smile that foreshadowed even greater torment. Lyra closed her eyes, bracing herself for the inevitable. She had fought so fiercely, she had endured so much, but it appeared her efforts had been for naught. Lyra's machinations had prevailed. She had been discredited, betrayed, and utterly defeated. And as the council prepared to deliver its judgment, Lyra knew that her life within the Blackwood Pack, her aspirations for a future with Kade, were about to be irrevocably shattered. A fierce defense the council chamber plunged into silence, a stillness so profound it felt like being submerged. Lyra stood tall, fighting the shivers threatening to betray her composure. Every gaze scrutinized her, weighing and judging. Tension vibrated in the air, amplified by Lyra's whispered slanders and the false documents coiled like asps on the table's gleaming surface. Kade's muteness was a condemnation, branding her flesh with doubt. Then, a shift, not towards her, but the council. His chair's rasp against the flagstones cut through the quietude, each scrape a deliberate act of defiance. He unfolded to his full stature, a palpable aura of alpha authority radiating from him. His keen stare swept the assembled wolves. Apprehension, deference, and resentment played across their faces. "Enough!" Kade's voice reverberated, a resonant growl that silenced dissent. "This farce ends now." Elder Corvus, wizened, eyes like polished jet, rasped, "Alpha, the evidence. It speaks volumes. Documents bearing Lyra's signature, outlining plans of assault, troop deployments." Kade's jaw hardened. He moved towards the table with predatory grace, snatching up a document. Firelight gleamed on the clumsy forgery. "This," he declared, voice dripping with scorn, "insults our collective intelligence." A cub could spot this fabrication. Murmurs echoed amongst the council members. Lyra, on the periphery, wore a mask of barely contained rage. "Are we so consumed by bias," Kade pressed, his voice gaining force, "that we would condemn a pack member on such flimsy grounds and ancient grievances? Time and again, Lyra has proven her dedication. She stood shoulder to shoulder with us against the rogues. She mended our injured. She has displayed more valor and empathy than many who have held seats on this council for decades." Elder Theron, silver threading his fur, voiced his skepticism. "Valor? Empathy? Or a cunning deception, Alpha? She is an outsider, hailing from a weakened pack. Can we truly trust her allegiance?" Kade pivoted, his eyes blazing with fury. "Weakened pack?" Lyra's pack was decimated defending their territory against a danger you wouldn't dare confront. And as for loyalties, Lyra's heart is with me, with this pack. I have witnessed it in her gaze, felt it in her touch. A collective intake of breath swept the room. Such intimacy, aired before the council, was a blatant breach of decorum. Kade remained unmoved. "You doubt her because she is different," he stated, voice laced with disdain. Because she challenges your antiquated notions of a Luna. Because she is not Lyra. Lyra's carefully crafted facade crumbled. Venom flashed in her eyes. How dare you, she spat. Defend this mongrel over your own kin? Over the woman promised to you? Ignoring her, Kade's gaze remained fixed on the council. I chose Lyra, he stated, his voice ringing with command. I marked her. She is my mate, and by the goddess, she will be afforded respect. I will not stand idly by while you dismantle her with lies and prejudice. Turning to Lyra, his eyes softened briefly. You have faced trials in these past weeks that would break most wolves, he said, his voice gentler, yet still carrying. You have displayed resilience, strength, and an unwavering devotion to this pack. Do not let their doubts diminish you. You are more than qualified to stand at my side. Lyra met his gaze, her heart a frantic drum. His words, though spoken publicly, resonated with a profound intimacy, a lifeline in a maelstrom of uncertainty. Hope flickered to life within her, fueled by the raw protectiveness in his eyes. Ever pragmatic, Elder Corvus spoke, his voice measured. Alpha, we acknowledge your feelings. However, the pack requires reassurance. They need assurance that their Luna will prioritize their well-being. Then let her earn it, Kade countered, steel returning to his voice. Present her with a task, a trial that will prove her loyalty beyond any question. I have faith in her. You should too. A murmur of assent spread through the council. A compromise, a means to appease both factions. Lyra knew what loomed, a trial of worth, a test designed to break her, to reveal any vulnerability. Elder Ferren gave a slow nod. Very well. We shall devise a fitting trial, one that will assess her strength, her cunning, and her allegiance to the Blackwood pack. Kade faced the council once more, his expression unreadable. I accept your terms, but be warned, he said, a low growl vibrating in the air. Should this trial be rigged, designed to ensure her failure, you will answer to me. He took Lyra's hand, his touch sending a surge of energy through her. A gentle squeeze, a silent pledge. Come, he said, his voice softening again. Let us prepare for whatever they intend to unleash. As they left the chamber, leaving the council to their scheming, Lyra couldn't suppress a sense of foreboding. The trial of worth was an ominous prospect, a gauntlet of ordeals designed to expose her deepest fears. Yet, as she looked at Kade, at the unwavering resolve in his eyes, she knew she wasn't alone in this. He had defended her, stood firm by her side, even with the pack arrayed against her. And that, she understood, was more precious than any title or status. The path ahead would be arduous. But she would face it alongside him, as his Luna. Truth revealed the trial of worth had begun disastrously, a calculated charade of accusations and veiled implications. Lyra, however, refused to yield, to shrink under Lyra's deliberate malice. Beneath the stark lunar glare in the heart of Blackwood Clearing, pine and fertile earth perfuming the air, she stood her ground. The council, a stern-faced assembly, observed with hawkish intensity. While the pack's murmurs formed a restless tide of doubt, Kade, a steadfast bulwark, stood beside her. His gaze, usually reserved, now offered unwavering support. You have heard the charges. Councilman Gregor's voice resonated, magnified by unseen forces. Accusations of treason, insidious whispers of disloyalty. Lyra Meadowlight, what say you in your defense? Lyra met his scrutiny unflinchingly. I am no traitor. The Blackwood pack holds my heart and my alpha, my allegiance. Her voice, clear yet underscored with barely contained strength, trembled not from fear, but the potent energy coursing within, an energy she knew she must now wield. Lyra, nestled among the council, smirked, venom glinting in her eyes. Mere words. We demand validation, not vows. Validation you shall receive, Lyra countered, her tone hardening. Closing her eyes, she delved inward, summoning the mounting power within. It felt like a tempest leashed, a cascade yearning to break free. She sought the truth, a fragile strand concealed beneath layers of artifice. She had trained for this, refined her ability to dissect falsehoods, to perceive the reverberations of past deeds. A collective intake of breath swept through the pack as a delicate, ethereal luminescence began to emanate from Lyra, enveloping her in a silver radiance that banished the encroaching gloom. The air hummed with contained force. "What manner of enchantment is this?" Councilwoman Anya demanded, her eyes wide with apprehension. Kade shifted slightly, his hand instinctively hovering near Lyra's arm. "It is the unveiling of truth." Lyra opened her eyes, now alight with inner fire. She fixed Lyra with a piercing gaze. "You orchestrated this, Lyra. The evidence is fabricated. You have poisoned the pack against me." Lyra's laugh was a brittle, mocking sound. "Absurd. She seeks to beguile with cheap tricks. Don't be fooled." "Is that so?" Lyra queried softly. She raised her hand, and the silver light solidified, coalescing into a shimmering sphere. Inside, visions began to materialize, fleeting moments playing like spectral memories. The first depicted Lyra in clandestine talks with a rogue wolf, Borak, a known Blackwood enemy, exchanging a silver pouch for a vial of wolfsbane. A wave of shock rippled through the throng. Borak, the one who attacked the patrol. The scene morphed. Lyra now stood over the pack's provisions, surreptitiously introducing a dark powder again, wolfsbane, into the meat stores. Wolves recoiled in horror, transfixed by the unfolding duplicity. Then, Lyra's hand forged Lyra's signature on a fabricated triggerand. Treaty. Ceding Blackwood lands to a rival faction. The council members traded aghast glances. "This is impossible," Councilman Gregor gasped, his face paling. Lyra's carefully constructed pretense crumbled. Panic widened her eyes, twisting her features into a mask of fury. "Lies! All lies! An illusion! A deception!" "The truth," Lyra reiterated, her voice resonating with authority. "The truth you so desperately tried to bury." The orb pulsed, revealing a final tableau. Lyra whispering to Zara, a young, impressionable pack member, sowing seeds of suspicion and distrust regarding Lyra. Zara, tears streaming down her face, stepped forward. "It's true," she confessed, her voice shaking. "Lyra told me she said Lyra was dangerous, that she would destroy the pack. She made me believe it." The pack dissolved into pandemonium, accusations hurled amidst the collision of disbelief and outrage. The council, faces etched with shame, fought to regain control. Kade's voice sliced through the turmoil like honed steel. Silence. Immediate stillness descended as every eye locked onto their alpha. He turned to Lyra, his expression a chilling mask of fury. "You have betrayed this pack, Lyra. You have poisoned our trust, endangered our kin, and attempted to frame an innocent." Defiant even in the face of exposure, Lyra glared back. "She stole you from me, Kade. She doesn't belong here. I was to be your Luna." You were afforded ample opportunity to prove your worth. Kade's voice was a dangerous rumble. Instead, you embraced treachery and deceit. He addressed the council. I entrust her punishment to you. But know this. Any leniency will be viewed as a betrayal of this pack. The council nodded, their faces grim. Councilman Gregor stepped forward, his voice heavy with judgment. Lyra Nightshade, for your crimes against the Blackwood Pack, for your treachery and your attempts to incite strife, you are stripped of your title and banished from our lands. Depart at once, never to return. A choked sob escaped Lyra, her eyes brimming with rage and despair. She fixed Ilara with a venomous glare. This is far from over, Ilara. I will have my vengeance. 2 guards seized Lyra, dragging her away, thrashing and screaming into the shadows. The pack watched in silence. The weight of her perfidy, a palpable burden. The silver aura around Ilara diminished, the orb dissolving. Exhausted but triumphant, she had confronted the lies, exposed the darkness, and emerged victorious. She met Kade's gaze, her heart overflowing with gratitude, and something deeper, a sensation both exhilarating and frightening. Kade's eyes held a warmth she rarely witnessed. You have proven yourself, Ilara, he said softly, almost reverently. You have revealed the truth. You are worthy. The pack, still grappling with the revelations, began to murmur their approval. Initial suspicion had given way to grudging respect, a burgeoning acceptance. Ilara surveyed the faces of the Blackwood Pack, her pack now. She had arrived an outsider, an unwelcome mate, but tonight she had earned her place. Tonight she had demonstrated that loyalty, truth, and love could vanquish even the most profound darkness. Yet she knew this was merely a prologue. Lyra's threat echoed in her mind, a somber promise of future battles. And the power within her, the unleashed force, remained. Enigma, a potential she had yet to fully grasp. The trials were far from concluded. Exiled, a revelation crashed over Lyra, shattering her carefully constructed facade. The pack's collective gasp, the irrefutable truth blazing from Ilara. It was a dam breaking. A strangled cry tore from her throat as she launched herself forward, not at the frustrating source of her woes, Kade, but at Ilara. You venomous little viper, she spat, claws extended, raking for Ilara's face. The air vibrated with the raw energy of Lyra's fury, a sharp, metallic tang permeating the atmosphere. Caught off guard after exposing Lyra's deceit, Ilara barely registered the attack. A sharp intake of breath was her only warning as Lyra's nails scored her cheek, a delicate line of red welling up. Before further damage could be inflicted, an unyielding force slammed into Lyra, sending her sprawling. Kade's bellow echoed, vibrating through the very ground beneath them. His eyes, usually the color of a turbulent sea, were now abyssal pits of incandescent rage. He loomed over Lyra, a formidable guardian protecting his own. How dare you, he rumbled, his voice a dangerous tremor. Attack my mate within my territory. After your duplicity stands revealed. Lyra recoiled, fear finally supplanting her rage-fueled audacity. She gazed up at Kade, a pathetic attempt at her former charm flickering briefly before dying out completely. The Kade she thought she knew, the one she believed she could manipulate, was gone, replaced by Alpha Kade, an elemental force. And she was squarely in the path of his retribution. Kade, please, she whimpered, the sound thin and unconvincing. She's bewitched you. I was only trying to shield the pack. Kade's expression remained a frozen mask of cold wrath. Silence. Your fabrications mean nothing. The pack has witnessed your true nature. He indicated the assembled wolves, their faces etched with a blend of shock and repugnance, their allegiance to Kade unwavering. Turning his attention back to Lyra, his voice dropped to a near inaudible level, amplifying the threat inherent in his tone. You have betrayed the pack, attempted to subvert my command, and assaulted my mate. The penalty for such transgressions is clear. Lyra watched, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The stinging mark on her cheek served as a tangible reminder of Lyra's malice. Yet, a strange serenity settled over her. The truth had surfaced. The pack had seen it. And Kade stood as her protector. I deserve the chance to explain myself, Lyra stammered, her gaze darting around desperately, seeking any sign of support. But the pack remained a silent, judgmental audience. Kade shook his head, his gaze unwavering. There is nothing to elucidate. Your actions paint a clear picture. You have forfeited your place within this pack, your right to dwell within our borders. He paused, his voice gaining resonance, amplifying across the clearing. Lyra Nightshade, by the authority vested in me as Alpha of the Blackwood Pack, I hereby banish you. You are forever unwelcome here. You are to depart our territory immediately and are forbidden to return. Should you defy this decree, you will be hunted down and face the consequences. A collective gasp rippled through the assembled wolves. Banishment equated to a qua. Slow demise for a solitary wolf. Lyra's face twisted with a volatile mix of fury and abject despair. You can't do this, she shrieked, scrambling to regain her footing. I am a nightshade. My lineage has served this pack for generations. Your lineage is honorable, Kade countered, his voice laced with contempt. You are not. You have sullied their name. He signaled to two of his most formidable warriors, their eyes reflecting unwavering resolve. Escort her to the border. Ensure she comprehends the ramifications of her return. The warriors advanced, their grip tightening on Lyra's arms. She struggled against them, her voice escalating into a desperate entreaty. Kade, please. I love you. I'll do anything. Just grant me another chance. Kade's expression remained implacable. Love is earned, Lyra, not demanded. You have demonstrated yourself incapable of it. He turned his back on her, his posture rigid. Take her away. As the warriors dragged Lyra toward the edge of the clearing, she twisted her head back, her eyes burning with vengeful fire. Her gaze locked onto Lyra, and she spat out a promise laced with venom. This is far from concluded, Lyra Meadowlight. You may have won this skirmish, but the war is far from over. I will extract my revenge. You will rue the day you ever set foot within Blackwood territory. Her words lingered in the air, a chilling premonition that sent a tremor down Lyra's spine. Despite praying, the pack's support, despite Kade's protection, she couldn't dismiss the feeling that Lyra's banishment wasn't a conclusion, but a prelude. The warriors disappeared into the dense foliage, dragging Lyra with them, her fading screams swallowed by the rustling leaves. Silence descended upon the clearing, broken only by the soughing wind and the labored breathing of the pack. Kade turned back to face Lyra, his hardened features softening perceptibly. He reached out, his fingers gently tracing the angry line on her cheek. Are you all right? He queried, his voice imbued with genuine concern. Lyra nodded, although her mind was still reeling from the tumultuous events. I'm fine, just unsettled. She lifted her gaze to meet his, her eyes searching his. Thank you, Kade. For everything. He returned her gaze, his eyes reflecting a complex tapestry of emotions. I should have recognized her true nature sooner. I allowed the ghosts of the past to cloud my judgment. He paused, his voice dropping to a bare whisper. I won't repeat that mistake. He drew her close, his arms enfolding her in a protective embrace. His scent, his warmth, were a solace, a reassuring affirmation that she wasn't alone. Yet, even within his embrace, surrounded by the steadfast members of the pack, Lyra was unable to shake the disquieting feeling. Lyra might be gone, but her threat remained, a looming storm gathering on the horizon. And Lyra knew, with a certainty that seeped into her very bones, that Lyra would pursue her vengeance relentlessly. Luna Ascendant, the rumble that resonated from the Blackwood pack wasn't one of predation, but of welcome. It enveloped Lyra, a palpable sonic wave that resonated through her very core, dispelling the final tendrils of apprehension that had clung to her like a persistent chill. Rooted beside Kade, the pack's potent energy pulsed beneath her boots. She was, at last, undeniably, their Luna. Faces previously guarded with suspicion now glowed with burgeoning respect, even genuine friendliness. Though some remained hesitant, their biases deeply entrenched, even in them, Lyra detected a spark of something novel, perhaps anticipation, or simply an acceptance of the present reality. Kade's hand, rough-hewn and powerful, enfolded hers, anchoring her. He offered no smile, but the fervent intensity in his eyes spoke volumes, a silent pledge of protection and unwavering support. For the first time since the binding ritual, Lyra tasted true belonging, a sense of not merely being endured, but embraced. The air hummed with unspoken sentiment, a shared understanding beyond mere words. The pack was reveling, a cacophonous symphony of exultant howls, cheers, and the joyful clinking of raised goblets. Yet, Lyra's focus remained solely on Kade. He was her bedrock, her guardian, her chosen mate. What was normally a hall of rigid decorum had morphed into a lively social hub. The long tables sagged under mountains of roasted game, freshly baked loaves, and brimming pitchers of ale. The atmosphere was thick with the fragrance of evergreens, wood smoke, and the captivating essence of spiced wine. Lyra observed as pack members, young and old, celebrated their triumph. Children darted through the throng, their unrestrained joy echoing against the stone walls. Warriors, their visages still bearing the marks of combat, swapped tails and hearty pats on the back. Even the elders, typically stoic and reserved, permitted themselves subtle smiles. This was their family, unified, resilient, poised to confront whatever lay ahead. A booming voice sliced through the din. "Luna Lyra!" It was Bram, Kade's second, his face flushed with drink and buoyant mirth. A toast to our Luna, who proved her mettle and shielded our alpha. He hoisted his tankard high, and silence descended as every gaze converged on Lyra. A surge of panic threatened to consume her. Public address had never been her strength. Then she recalled Lyra's cutting barbs, the pack's initial antagonism, and Kade's steadfast faith in her. Drawing a steadying breath, she met Bram's jovial stare and offered a small, wavering smile. She lifted her own goblet, the liquid catching the torchlight like captured rubies. "To the Blackwood pack," she began, her tone surprisingly even. "To unity, strength, and a future where we stand as one, regardless of our differences." The hall erupted anew, the cheers eclipsing those before. Lyra felt a wave of warmth blossom within her, a sensation of purpose she'd never experienced. This was her family now, her responsibility, and she would not falter. Kade observed her, his expression an enigma. He had witnessed her bravery, her empathy, her unwavering devotion. He had known, instinctively, of her worthiness. But witnessing the pack's acceptance, experiencing their genuine affection for her, suffused him with a pride he'd not anticipated. He had chosen her for vengeance, a spiteful act aimed at Lyra. But Lyra had evolved into far more than a mere pawn. She had become his mate, his partner, his Luna. As the revelries continued, Kade steered Lyra away from the throng, toward the balcony overlooking the moon-bathed forest. The air was invigorating and crisp, carrying the scent of moist earth and blossoming wildflowers. The full moon dominated the sky, painting long, sinuous shadows across the terrain. "They accept you," Kade murmured, his voice gravelly. "You've earned their regard." Lyra leaned against the stone balustrade, her gaze sweeping across the hushed woods. "It's more than that, Kade. It's acknowledgement, connection. Something I never imagined attainable." He drew closer, his presence engulfing her senses. The aroma of pine and feral musk enveloped her, simultaneously comforting and intoxicating. He reached out, his fingertips tracing the graceful arc of her jawline. "You deserve it, Lyra. You are resilient, courageous, and more than deserving of this pack." His words, delivered with such earnestness, welled tears in her eyes. She had weathered so much hostility, so much uncertainty. To finally receive these assurances from him held immeasurable significance. She turned to face him, her heart brimming with gratitude and growing affection. "Thank you, Kade, for believing in me even when I doubted myself." He cradled her face in his calloused hands, his thumbs gently wiping away the moisture. His gaze pierced hers, intense and possessive. "I will always believe in you, Lyra. You are my mate, my Luna, and I will protect you, always." He lowered his head, his lips ghosting against hers. It was a tender kiss, a tentative exploration, laden with unspoken promises. Lyra responded without hesitation, her hands rising to cup his face. The kiss deepened, becoming more fervent, more demanding. It was a kiss that solidified their bond, a testament to their burgeoning love. Breaking away slightly, Kade rested his brow against hers. "The moon stands at its zenith," he breathed, his voice thick with desire. "Let us formalize our bond, Lyra. Let the pack witness our unity, eternally." Lyra shivered, a frisson of excitement coursing through her. She knew his intent. To present themselves to the pack under the full moon's gaze, to consecrate their union before their kin, was a powerful statement. It was a declaration of their love, their commitment, and their unwavering loyalty to each other and to the Blackwood pack. Taking his hand, she stepped onto the balcony, bathed in the full lunar glow. The pack, sensing their presence, fell silent. Every eye was riveted upon them, expectant. Kade raised his hand, his voice echoing across the courtyard. "Blackwood pack, I present to you my mate, my Luna, Lyra Meadowlight." He turned to Lyra, his eyes overflowing with adoration and respect. He knelt before her, a gesture of reverence and devotion that stunned the gathered throng. He took her hand, his touch sending tremors down her spine. "Lyra," he said, his voice resonating with profound emotion. "Will you stand by my side as my Luna and guide this pack with me through whatever trials may come?" Tears cascaded down Lyra's cheeks as she gazed at Kade, at the pack, at the future unfolding before them. She had never felt so alive, so empowered, so cherished. "Yes, Kade," she replied, her voice ringing with conviction. "I will." Kade rose, drawing her into his embrace. He kissed her deeply, passionately, sealing their destinies before the entire Blackwood pack. The ensuing roar was deafening, a celebration of their love, their concord, and their aspirations for the future. Lyra closed her eyes, melting into Kade's embrace. Finally, unequivocally, Luna ascendant. Yet, even as she reveled in the moment, a shard of ice pierced her heart. Lyra's vow of vengeance echoed in her mind, a dark cloud looming over their hard-won joy. The battle was far from its conclusion,